like to welcome you to this discussion on natural turf management, where it's our objective to take you through the steps required to embark on a successful natural turf management program that will allow you to grow strong and healthy athletic fields without the use of chemical pesticides and synthetic fertilizers. The market for natural turf management is a rapidly growing market, and that's not happening just by accident. Folks all around the country are beginning to look at and request a less toxic approach to growing of grass, and legislatures and local jurisdictions around the country are beginning to respond by enacting legislation that now prohibits the use of many of these products for us to use on our sports field. Connecticut and New York clearly are leading the way nationally and are in the forefront of this type of legislation, where there are now restrictions on what can and cannot be used in the way of both fertilizers and pesticide control products on children's sports fields and public parks. We're seeing local jurisdictions around the country beginning to wrestle and grapple with this issue internally and self-restrict what can happen on their own properties. So now what we have is developed a natural turf management program that is going to allow us to approach turf grass in a different way, from a different perspective, but the end result will be that strong, healthy, and durable turf system for our young athletes to play on. This is not the old organics of 15 or 20 years ago, where someone just went out and bought a bag of natural organic fertilizer or a pallet, if it was a large property, put it down, walked away, did little or nothing else, and it usually ended up to be a miserable failure. What we're talking about now, and what we will continue to talk about in this video, is new science. It's natural organics, but as approached from emerging science in a very technical way, where we're putting a series of steps together in a well thought out process that's going to allow us to grow that healthy turf and be free of insect, weeds, and disease. This doesn't just happen by accident. There's an education level. What we're about is trying to raise that level of education so that you will now have that knowledge to move forward and feel comfortable and have the confidence to begin to embrace this alternative approach and know that you'll end up with a quality athletic field as the end result. My personal experience goes back many, many years, being a professional horticulturist for the last 35, 36 years. Initially, my focus in horticulture was in the commercial greenhouse industry, where I was taught to mix a cocktail mix of pesticides every 7 to 10 days, apply them to my crops so that no economic injury would result. There were a series of events that happened in my life that made me think that this might not be the best way, both for my own health and for a variety of other reasons that were happening in my life at the time, the least of which was my customers that were coming into this environment. 15 years ago, I shifted my horticultural specialty sideways to encompass turf grass management, because I felt that if I could do this on a commercial level in a greenhouse environment, then I would then begin to encourage people to grow grass without the use of pesticides and synthetic fertilizers. Grass is a garden thug. It's certainly not one of the most difficult crops out there in the world to grow. And once we know the appropriate strategies, the right techniques, the right product, put them all together in some sensible form in a very well thought out program, we now have the makings of being able to grow in a natural turf management system and produce quality results. The one thing that you can put to rest is that fear of failure. There's a general fear out there that if we move from a conventional management program to a natural approach, that our fields will fall apart, that they will completely be devastated, overrun with insects, weeds, and disease in a very short time, and be rendered unplayable. That simply does not happen. In all of my experience, I have never seen that happen. There will be a period of time that we refer to as the transition period. This move from conventional management to natural organic will not happen overnight, but it will involve some effort over a period of 2 or 3 years, addressing inputs and cultural practices. And once we get through that period, we will then experience cost reductions, and turf will incrementally get better year after year. We will be following a systems approach to natural turf management that involves three basic concepts. That concept of healthy soils. At some point in high school biology, we were taught that a handful of soil contains billions of living organisms that nature put there for the sole purpose of growing things. We don't all need to be soil scientists, just an acknowledgement that that soil is very much alive and that fundamentally that is at the root of growing healthy turf grass and supplying appropriate turf grass nutrition. The second part of the systems approach involves natural organic product as mandated or as dictated by proper soil testing. And the third piece of the puzzle that we bring in is horticultural practices, those very specific and proper cultural practices like mowing and irrigation, thatch management, aeration for the relief of compaction, seeding, overseeding, and the use of compost as a top dress. When we incorporate these three different concepts into one management plan, we now are addressing the system. So we have fundamentally created that systems approach to natural turf management that dramatically differs from that product-centered approach of the conventional industry. We don't treat symptoms in natural turf management. We solve problems. Crabgrass. Conventional treats the symptom. I'm going to solve the problem. My weed killer is a good bag of grass seed. Because if I fill up those bare spots with legitimately growing cool season turf grass, and if I improve turf density, more plant turf density being the technical term for the number of plants growing in a square foot, if I raise turf density, crabgrass is going to become less and less of an issue. I'm not going to eradicate it in 3 or 4 weeks like I would with a conventional product, but over a transition period, and we'll talk about what a transition period is, we can reduce and eliminate crabgrass. In addition to a bag of grass seed, we do correct mowing heights, we proper turf grass nutrition to stimulate the grass, and we've solved that crabgrass problem and it goes away, and at some point in the future we're not becoming a slave to continually buying this product year after year after year. So in a natural turf management program, it all boils down to the objective is to create and establish a healthy soil. A good example of a healthy soil will provide nitrogen, nutrient release. The organisms are present. We'll go into that in detail on what happens down there. And a good example is my own Marblehead athletic fields. Because of the drought that we have now and the heat that's out there, we had to scrap our second spring fertilization. We don't do high doses of fertility in any one application. We do 2 low-dose spring applications. And the second one we had to stop because it was just too hot. And the fields are gorgeous, they're green, minimal fertilizer. I think they've only had 3/4 pound of nitrogen to date. And they're bright green and lush, and it's all because we have spent several years creating and establishing this very healthy soil. So again, just in review, the systems approach, and this is what it is, it's the understanding of the soil. We'll talk about that, natural organic product, and then proper and specific cultural practices. So fundamentally what we're doing is putting a series of preventative steps in place so that problems never get out of control. That's not to say we're not going to get a problem at some point. Certainly the issue of grubs, we may get grubs, we may get minor fungal issues, but in organic sports fields, organic lawns, fungal disease, if it comes in bad hot weather like we've had, it usually we can manage it so that it takes care of itself. But problems are easier to manage with a healthy organic system all in place. The basics of an organic lawn care program or organic turf management program that we will put in place. Soil testing as a basis for all inputs, identifying the healthy biological component of the soil, and then taking strategic steps necessary, both culturally and product input, to maximize that. The use of compost tea sprays, I firmly believe that compost tea fundamentally is going to change the face of turf management and horticulture in general, over the years. In Marblehead, we're purchasing equipment next week, and we're basically going to go to replacing 90% of all our granular fertilizer applications will be replaced with applications of compost tea, humic acid, kelp, and fish-based fertilizer in the form of a liquid fish hydrolysate. And we're going to begin to completely manage fertility in an extremely low-cost way. We're looking at our budget of saving $17,000 over the next 18 months, fundamentally moving into compost tea as nutrient management through the biological complex of the soil, as opposed to just the traditional way that it has been done with top dressing with organic fertilizers. Top dressing with physical windrowed compost for building organic matter. We're going to talk a little bit about how important it is to have good organic matter. When I talk to you about organic matter, we're going to think about that as being the home for the organisms. So when we apply organisms to the soil in the form of compost tea, or when we use humic acid and seaweed and kelps and fish-based products to feed those organisms and grow them to large amounts, they are living and sustaining themselves in this organic matter complex of the soil. Use of natural organic fertilizer as dictated by soil testing, and then those cultural practices being seeding, overseeding, aeration, irrigation, and managing all of that aspect.